My name is Laura Rupel, and today I have a special interview with Denise Tryon, Associate Professor of Horn at the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music. I hope you enjoy.
So my name is Denise Tryon, and I am the Associate Professor of Horn at University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music. What a long name. And I've been here now, I'm just starting my fourth year. Before that, I played in a multitude of orchestras. Most recently, I played in the Philadelphia Orchestra for about a decade.
How did you get your start in music?
I started playing piano. I was like 5 or 6, something. Of course, it was my mother's idea. So I played piano and took lessons and gave recitals every year, all of that for about 10 or 11 years. And the reason that I stopped is, I'll just say that I really did not like the piano. That was the nice way of me saying that. It was just not the right instrument for me. And my mom had a thing where I was going to play until I was 16. So literally woke up the day of my 16th birthday and was like, yep, quit. And when I went to go choose an instrument, a band or a string instrument, I was, I don't know, 12, something like that. And I wanted to be a drummer. I wanted to play rock and roll. There you go. Wow, that made me sound really old. Whatever. So, and my mom said, absolutely not. I'm not having a drum set in my house. And then I said, okay, I want to play the flute. And she said, no, there are like a million flutists out there. So she said, you're going to play that, and pointed at the horn. Honestly, I started crying. I thought the case was ugly. Yeah. But what I really loved initially about the instrument is, of course, the sound, although I wasn't producing a great sound. But I loved the puzzle that was the horn, and trying to figure out how to produce a note on, so many notes on the same fingering. So for me, the love of the puzzle, which is really strong for me, the love of the puzzle has what's kept me going all this time.
I took a horn home one weekend in middle school, and this is your love of the puzzle definitely makes sense, because I was like alone in my basement with this instrument, and I have had a good ear, and I had taken piano, and I played clarinet in band, and I just could not figure out what I was supposed to do. And I'm like, how do I know what is what? So do you really encourage young horn players to get with a older horn player or a teacher of some sort early on? I
think it's better to have some kind of teacher there, whether that is a horn player or at least a brass player that understands about the partial series and harmonic series, and making sure that you understand all these notes that you can play. Plus, there's a transposition aspect to it as well. So it is, luckily, I had somebody who he was like, okay, you're going to learn C, D, and E, and 2 of those notes are on the same fingering. So that was my only goal for that first week, was to learn 3 whole notes. And boy, my mom was real sick of those 3 notes by the time that week finished.
No, I think with some instruments, oboe is kind of similar. It's like starting really small is actually the way to go. And I think that weekend I was like, oh, I'm just going to learn how to play horn. Yeah, right. I gave it right back. When did horn become something you wanted to do forever?
I got into the Interlochen summer camp, and the way I got there, we didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, so I definitely needed some kind of a scholarship to get there. So I did something that I don't know if they still do, but it's called the Governor's Scholarship, and they choose 1 person per state, and that's all instruments, and I won it that year for Minnesota. So I was able to go, and that was between my junior and my senior year, and I just fell in love with it. We played Tchaikovsky's 6, and I just completely fell in love, and I thought, boy, if I could feel like this, feel these emotions for a career, that would be amazing. Of course, it was, at a time when your emotions are already kind of heightened and crazy. So, of course, you still have those moments playing professionally, but it isn't like every single moment that you ever play feels that in depth. So I was there for the summer, and then I didn't know that there was an academy until I was there. So I auditioned for the academy while I was there and got in. And had been doing part-time jobs and babysitting and all that, so I was able to actually afford to go, which was fantastic. So that's when I knew, between the summer between my junior and senior year.
Yeah, I think those performances that like you said, you feel all the emotions,
Yeah.
are what kind of keeps all of us coming back every day. So I
Yeah.
think having that moment right at that pivotal summer
Yeah.
of deciding what to do is probably exactly what they were trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it's like they were trying to evoke something, and they got it.
It worked. And then where did you attend school for your undergrad?
For my undergrad, I went to, I say that as if I have other degrees.
Yeah.
My undergrad is the only degree I have. And I went to New England Conservatory in Boston. I studied with Chuck Kowalowski, who was then principal horn of the Boston Symphony. I studied with him for 3 years, and then he took a leave of absence my last year of school, so I studied with the tuba player in the Boston Symphony. And the reason I chose to do that is because his studio was incredible. And I would go to his studio classes, and it's something I highly recommend to young musicians, is go check out other instruments studio class if they allow it, if you don't have anything else at that time, or other instruments master classes, because you will learn things that you didn't realize you were going to learn.
Yeah.
And so I had to jump through a few hoops in order for that to happen, but it happened and it was great. And we only talked about music. Some people ask if that's why I sort of specialize in the low register. Absolutely not. And then I stuck around Boston for a bit of time with my wind quintet, and we had been winning a lot of competitions, and we auditioned and got into the artist diploma degree at NEC. And that degree is very, it's like soloists only, one person per year type of thing. So we were the second group to ever be admitted, and I still feel very honored that happened.
As a group.
As a group, yeah. And the other group was the Borromeo String Quartet. So it was a big honor, and I was happy to be there. I didn't finish the degree because I ended up going to New World Symphony halfway through, but yeah, it was a good time. I enjoyed being in Boston.
I've heard from multiple people recommendations to take lessons with a tuba player, because I think breathing, of course, we have a lot to learn from that instrument. What was something during your undergraduate degree that maybe you struggled with that you weren't expecting, or that was unexpected in general?
I'm not sure anything is unexpected. That's just the way my brain works. You know, I just sort of assume that I have to put my head down and just do the work, and kind of, you know, I will eventually move forward if I keep doing that. I have a tendency to always just, when I go to study with somebody, I just trust what they're telling me. And I put all my eggs in that basket, and I really do whatever they're telling me. And I just make the assumption, for right or for wrong, you know, we learn what to do and what not to do from our teachers, and our colleagues. So, you know, for me, there was nothing unexpected that I felt like I struggled with. I felt like I struggled with a lot, and I certainly was not considered one of the best horn players at NEC. I went through during both in my undergrad and high school, and then also a little bit later, I went through 4 embouchure changes. And that, to me, was the most challenging thing that I've gone through, both mentally and physically. Much more so mentally.
Yeah.
So that might be something that, you know, you would throw into that pile, but for me it was just part of the learning process. And I think I felt that way at that time. I don't think that's, you know, looking back on it. I really just felt like, well, I don't really know anything, so everything is new to me, and I got to figure out how to do it.
If you're consciously making the decision to put full trust into a teacher, I think if they're telling you, oh, your embouchure needs to change, then you're like, okay, well, that's part of it, or this is the steps I need to take, and
and I'm really going to date myself at this point, but I do think it's one of the great things about not having the internet or social media during my growth process on the instrument. I didn't have anyone else to turn to. You know, I mean, I could have gone to the other horn teachers or tuba or whatever, but I wasn't getting random people's information or thoughts off of the internet. And so there are some students that I have to say, you have to just take like a month break from reading all of the everything, and just put your trust in me for a little bit of time. That's why you came here. And I did that, and again, I learned good things, and I learned some things not to do. But I think that's true from everyone you meet, you know, even your friends, your family. You're like, yes, I love the way you do that. Okay, maybe I won't try and emulate that with what you're doing. So for me, I'm very grateful that I grew up sort of in that time.
One thing I noticed on your website that you mentioned kind of a little bit earlier too is if you follow these process, if you do this every day, you will get better.
Yeah.
And do you think that's kind of your philosophy for music making?
100%. Yeah, I really believe in process versus the end result. And so for me, and I can say this really clearly now, I'm not sure I could say it super clearly when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
So when I was in my 20s, I definitely had some goal orientation issues. I'm not sure that was great English, but I'm sticking with it. I really was focused on the end result. I want to get a job, and I want to get a specific type of job. I want to be in a top 5 orchestra. And that little quote unquote goal kind of, I don't know, made life a little bit challenging for me. Where now I realized that really what I needed to be focusing on, which I was focusing on as well, but just the process. And if you just do the work and are methodical about it and do it every day, do it on the days and the times when you don't want to do it, you will get better. And if you can just look at day by day, hour by hour, instead of, I'm supposed to be this good at this point. Any of my current or former students listening right now know that I'm trying to avoid some certain words, and I'll put them in air quotes, which only you can see, but I should be this good by now. I should be able to do that, and I really dislike that word because everyone's on their own trail, and they figure out, we just figure out how to get somewhere. I don't even want to say the end result because it's a continuous road forever, and I'm still trying to become a better player, a better musician, and I think that the day that I stop trying to do that is the day I probably will put down the horn. So for me, it's process oriented, and then whenever you go and perform, that is just a snapshot of whatever it is that's working or maybe not working in the practice room of the process.
Our new oboe professor, Titus Underwood, recently in a studio class said something similar that kind of opened my eyes. He said, we're in the business of practicing. We only perform like once a month, or you don't perform every day, you practice every day. And I was like, oh, I should really start loving practicing. It's not the performing that gets you through the hard days.
Yeah, and I find that for most people, me included, it's not like I wake up every day and I'm like, oh yes, I cannot wait to practice. But as soon as I get my butt into the chair, then I'm in it. And so for me, I've had to set times, so when we were talking about scheduling, I said, I always practice at 8, and so I'm available after 9, type of a thing. And that time is my time, and I be sure that I give to myself with practicing first before I give to anyone else. That's just really important to me, and I do try to impress this upon my students as well.
And I thought that was a really cool example to see. I was like, she's got to practice. She's a professor. She's got to practice.
Right.
What was that mental headspace like when you did land that job in the top 5 orchestra?
Well, I landed it quite late in my life. So I was in my late 30s when I got that job. And I was in a top 10 at that time, and I was sort of grappling with, as I get older, am I actually going to be able to do this? And I had really tried to move past this idea of that goal. But there was still this just little tiny thing in the back of my brain just kind of, talking to me. And I think it was more than just I want to be in a top 5. I think it was also I have other things I want to accomplish, and as someone who doesn't hold a very magical word in their title, which is the word principal, I needed that top 5 name behind my name. That was a lot of names. Top 5 orchestra name behind my own personal name in order to get me more noticed within the horn community. So it was really, I went to that audition not really knowing what was going to happen. I still feel like I wasn't sure that my sound and my style of playing was really going to work within that orchestra, and it did work, but I think it was everybody had to mold just a little bit over time. So I was really shocked when I won it. Yeah, that's the only thing I've got. It's the only word I have is I was really shocked.
And then once you had that job, what was the transition like into this job?
So I had been teaching at Peabody Institute in Baltimore. I actually started teaching there when I was in Detroit. So every week I would fly from Detroit to Baltimore. And I did that for 2.5, 3 years, something like that. And then I got into Philly, and that was a nice 70-minute train ride, and that was great. So for me, as my career kept going, and I finally put out a solo CD, and then I was starting to do more recitals and master classes and asked to do festivals, there became a sticking point in my life, which I'm sort of morphing into another question that you have, but it got to the point where I almost had a full-time teaching position, and I had a very heavy full-time orchestral position. We traveled a lot. We were on tour quite a bit. The summer we traveled quite a bit. So it just made my life more and more challenging, and I was just getting at the point where I just felt like I couldn't continue it. So to me, I felt like I kind of had to make a decision, and so I chose to take a 1-year leave from the orchestra, because I felt more like the students had come there for me, and I didn't feel comfortable taking a year leave for them. And it was much easier for me to take the year leave from the orchestra. So I thought, it's more important for me to figure out, can I live without not playing full-time in an orchestra? And I had been playing full-time in orchestras for about 25 years at that point. So, I've played all the Brahms, all the everything, a lot. So I knew that by about October or maybe November, I would be able to tell how I was feeling, moving into that sort of more full-time position. And it was pretty clear that I was okay with it. And I was getting asked to do a lot of subbing, so I knew that it wasn't really going to be a problem for me. And I was only in that position for 1 year, 1.5 years, until I moved here. And this position is heavier than the Peabody position. The studio is bigger, and that therefore I have to keep my fingers in a lot more pies, remember what everybody's doing and all that, which they're going to laugh listening to that, because I have the worst memory on the planet, so remember what they're all doing. So that was a challenge, and really keeping my playing up, that was the bigger challenge, because you're just you don't have the orchestra keeping you in pretty decent shape. So that's why I am really pretty strict with when my practice time is, and I really try not to interrupt that. So in every semester I've been here, I have tweaked my schedule to try and find the optimal work time for me. And I think this semester I've hit upon it, so that's good. Start of the 4th year. 8 a.m. is my time to practice. And then I also have an hour at the very end of the day. So I'm here long days, but then I get it all done, and I feel good about what I've done.
I think one of the benefits to moving into full-time teaching a lot of times is then you get to choose when you play. And like you said, keeping in shape becomes important for that, because you want to take those opportunities when they come. Yeah, and I really want to be able to say yes to as many outside opportunities as I can. And that was becoming a little bit of a struggle within the orchestra plus the Peabody aspect. So it was like those two huge puzzle pieces, and then somebody would ask me to do something great, and I'm like, first off, I can't get off work, either work. I don't know how to fit this in. So it was this really allows me to go do some of the other things that I really love to do. Yeah. Have you ever considered what you would do if music was not an option?
Well, prior to the summer between my junior and senior year, I thought that I would either be some kind of an engineer or, randomly, an accountant. I love puzzles. I do love the process. I love numbers. So there was a lot of that. Now, if you were to ask me, especially after being a horn professor, I would probably say speech therapist. Because I love trying to describe what's happening in the mouth, and I love trying to figure out how to talk about that process of the inhale and the exhale and how to get everything to flow on that exhale.
Yeah.
So for me, I think now it would be something different, although weirdly still the accounting thing sounds kind of cool. I don't know why.
She's smiling.
I don't know why, but yeah.
Someone's got to do it.
Someone's got to do it.
For you, was switching into academia a big career focus change? Like, I use the word detour a lot.
Right. It felt like something that happened kind of naturally. If you would have asked me when I was in school or even in my early 30s, if I saw myself going into academia, the answer would be no. I've always enjoyed teaching, and I've really, since I was probably 20 or 21, I've always kept a studio, a private studio going. But I probably didn't see myself doing that.
Yeah.
And then when it started to become clear that I liked teaching, I thought, okay, well, I'll probably leave orchestra in my early, mid-50s. And I ended up leaving it kind of in my mid-40s. So it just felt like the right time.
Yeah.
And I think that the more we can get away from the goal, and also just having a preconceived idea of what our career is supposed to be. And then I think when you see these doors, windows, however you want to call it, these things open for us, these opportunities present themselves, take them and see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a huge detour. I mean, a lot of people thought I was pretty crazy to leave the Philadelphia Orchestra. You get that top dream job, and then you walk away. I didn't even have a full-time job at Peabody. I was adjunct. So there was a lot of, what are you doing? And I said, I'm just testing the waters to see what's going to happen. And I knew I just couldn't continue like that. So a lot of people say that was a big split for me. It wasn't.
Yeah.
If you're on the inside of me, it's like that wasn't a huge thing for me.
And I think that can give your students a lot of respect for your confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have the experience of many different fields within music. And then you gave someone else the chance to be in the Philadelphia Orchestra.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't very happy doing all of that. I loved being in the orchestra. I loved teaching. I couldn't do it all. And it was clear that I was becoming a little bit unhappy. Unhappy. That was the best way to say that. And everybody deserved better in my life. So it was time for me to find a way to just be a little bit more content, have a little bit more downtime, get to be a human being and have social interactions, all of those things, instead of just working.
What drew you to the position here at CCM?
When I decided to take that leave from the orchestra, I knew that there were a couple of teaching positions that were really dream positions for me. And it mostly had to do with already the level of the studio and the size of the institution that I knew would give me opportunities that I maybe didn't have without it. And CCM was one of those positions. And I'd been here, I don't know a few years prior to that, giving a little mini recital and masterclass, and the horn professor at the time, Randy Gardner, gave me a little tour, and I remember standing on this little walkway that goes from Memorial to Emory, and looking out over sort of the football field, and it was a beautiful fall day, so it was like all these great colors, and I just completely fell in love.
Yeah.
And I had never been here prior to that, so I'm not sure it would have really been on that dream list. And eventually the Peabody position did become full-time, and on my first day of work full-time at Peabody, I got a call saying that Randy had decided to retire, and my name had come up in discussions and would I consider applying. So yeah, I didn't have a CV at the time. I mean, it was just like I was not prepared to sort of move into that. So there was a lot of scrambling in the beginning.
All the puzzle pieces.
All the puzzle pieces. I do love them. And over the pandemic, I've brought back my love of actual jigsaw puzzles. So there's always a puzzle going on my dining room table.
That's awesome. What are your current goals for yourself as a musician or your studio here?
Well, I've already talked about goals. I'm not super into goals.
Okay.
But I will talk about things that I would like to, accomplish or see directions. Try to have some directional process. For me, it has been for a long time, and it will continue to be just trying to be the best musician and horn player I can be. And there are always a few things that I'm trying to improve in my own playing. And now that we haven't been playing, I haven't played with another human being in a very long time. There's a whole thing of now dealing with some performance anxiety, getting back out there.
Can I do that?
Can I do this again? What is this? Who are you? How do I play with you? So there's a little bit of that, and I'm looking forward to. I have a few opportunities coming up in the near future that will be great. So for me, it's really just trying to focus on that for my own personal playing. For the studio, really my goal for them, I can't believe I just said goal,
Sorry.
is to, not your fault, is I want everybody who steps in here, by the time they leave, to be as happy and healthy of a musician and person as they can be, and really, quote unquote, what is happy, but that they understand the fundamentals of the instrument, they understand how to build phrases, they have some ideas that they can work with if they get into playing problems, if they start to have some mental chatter that's happening around playing. Give them the tools that they can then work through those issues on their own, so that really I'm made obsolete within their world. I'll always be there for them, but be able to just do their own thing. So for my studio, I just want them to be happy, healthy, well-rounded musicians and horn players.
Yeah.
In the field, there are two fields that I see. One is horn, two is I'm brass, and I could say wind brass, but I'm going to go brass.
Yeah, that's okay.
So in the horn world, there's been, in my opinion, low horn is a little bit pushed off to the side, or at least it was 20 years ago. And it is the area that I feel the most comfortable in. I am still quite a fine high horn player, but I am a much better low horn player. And so really I'm trying to build excitement around playing in the low register. So through recordings that I do and commissioning works and just going and trying to talk about it, I really am trying to build that excitement so that people, if they are interested in the low range, they don't feel like they have to kind of hide that. For the brass world, I would really love it to be more inclusive. It just really drives me crazy when I see pictures of festivals, brass ensemble concerts, sections that only show one portion of the society. And so I feel a little bit at loss on how to really change that, but anytime I am in charge of helping pick who judges need to be for a competition or people that I want to have into the school, I am really trying to think as globally as possible. So that hopefully I can be a little bit of a leader in that and a role model, so that other brass players get to say, oh, I didn't know that person. That person was fantastic. I'm going to ask that person for my own thing. So hopefully just shedding some light on some people that maybe aren't getting some light right now.
And sometimes the best way for that is in students and picking students to attend a great school or learn from one of your students. Something I would love to know more about. You just have your undergraduate degree. How do you advocate for that, I guess?
At the time that, and this was early 90s when I graduated with my degree, it wasn't as commonplace to get your master's. I am not a fan. I'm kind of hesitating because I understand what's getting ready to come out of my mouth. I am not a huge fan of school.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
That's okay.
Now I teach at one. I just think that sometimes people stay in school because they're nervous about being out in the quote-unquote real world.
Oh, yeah.
So I really do try to talk to somebody about, especially if they want to get a DMA. Why are you getting a DMA? Are you hoping to be in an orchestra someday? This is the wrong degree.
Yeah.
But, sometimes people just kind of stay in school because they don't know what to do. And that's part of the reason I want to give the students the tools to be able to know what to do.
Yes.
So I thought, okay, if I want to study with somebody, I'll just either fly to them and do it, or I'll move to that city and try to, study with them. So it just was never something I wanted. In fact, I really did actually try to convince my mom to not, could I just not get a bachelor's? Because NEC had a diploma, an undergrad diploma. And I was like, can I switch to that? Absolutely not, she said. So if I had my way, I wouldn't even have a degree.
Yeah.
It is a bit challenging being at a school that then, of course, has, in particular, a lot of DMA sort of students and the degree. And there's some question, at the UC level about allowing people that don't have a master's to advise DMA students. And there was some talk of, well, is there a way to do an honorary master's? And I'm going to tell you, I kind of don't want it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool.
I kind of like the fact that I quote unquote only have a bachelor's.
Exactly.
So no more has been said about that, and hopefully it doesn't come up again. But I do know that it is an issue, and a lot of times job postings say master's required, or even DMA preferred, but it always says professional experience, or is something. And I mean, really, by the time you get into the Philadelphia Orchestra, and you've put out several solo CDs, and you are going to all the festivals, that's enough.
Yeah.
So I was able to get around it that way. I don't know really how many more like me are going to be able to get positions like that. I'm not trying to dampen anyone's spirits that's listening. I'm just saying, it's kind of a special thing.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that's unique about you that makes you like a leader in the field, and kind of to hold on to that, not even in the fact that you don't want to learn, because obviously that's not the case, but it's like, why
get a degree that I've clearly proven that I can do, and
teach.
And teach. So and there's somebody in the Detroit Symphony Horn section who won the job when he was 17 and hadn't finished high school yet.
Yep.
And and that, I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't happen anymore. That it just doesn't happen. But and he's such a great player and so knowledgeable and such a lovely human. I mean, it's just I just think it's really great. Exactly. One of the best learning tools is to be in chamber music. And my wind quintet that I was in, I started as a freshman, and I stayed in it for 6 years. And really, I feel like the musician I am today is in large part because of working with them. And then I felt like I did kind of have to make a decision about, am I going to try and pursue chamber music as a career or orchestra as a career? And I jokingly say that I wanted to play above a mezzo forte, especially since I was in a wind quintet. That group was very special to me. And now, the past couple of years, I've gotten to be in the American Horn Quartet, which is kind of a dream come true. So I do get to fulfill that part of me that I wasn't getting to do a lot, especially because a lot of people look at the fourth horn in an orchestra and like, well, I don't think that person probably wants to play the Brahms Trio. I would love to play the Brahms Trio for anyone listening. So I do think chamber music is a really important part of our growth as musicians. And to try and do as much of it as you can, whenever you can. Student, professional, whatever, do as much of it as you can. I really want to dive in those quotes. Yeah. There were two that really spoke to me.
Great.
So one is from Mahler, and he says, "I'm hitting my head against the walls, but the walls are giving way." I often say, I didn't know that quote from him, I often say that my greatest strength as a horn player is the fact that I'm willing to kind of run at walls until one of us falls down, and it's not going to be me.
Yeah.
You know, and I get bloodied and hurt, and it's okay. I just keep running at the problem, and I try to approach it from a lot of different angles. So that one kind of spoke to me. And the other one is study Bach. There you will find everything. And all of my students, we all play Bach cello suite. Sorry to the cellists out there and probably string players in general, but it's such great music, still ahead of his time. And it's great music. It goes all over the instrument. And really, when I'm asking my students to work on it, and when I'm working on it, I'm trying to be the best musician I can be and not an acrobatic horn player.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we confuse those two. Oh, if I can just play all of the notes, then I sound great. No, it's boring. You know, let's get to some music. So those two really spoke to me, and I felt like I really had to say those.
No, that's great. I think for Bach especially, you have to surpass the facility of your instrument in order to make the music.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed speaking with Professor Tryon. I think I learned a lot about really embracing the process of music making and not getting bogged down by that term goal or the perfect path or the perfect dream job. It's all about the process and figuring out those puzzle pieces, and if the puzzle pieces don't align to you being happy, healthy, and a well-rounded, amazing musician, then the puzzle needs to be fixed, and all the pieces fitting together is what we're working towards. If you'd like to keep up with the podcast, there are multiple ways you can do so. First of all, you can go to our website, which is detoursandmusicpodcast.weebly.com. You could also subscribe to our YouTube channel, also called Detours and Music Podcast. We also have a Facebook page and Instagram account where you can like and follow us. The Detours and Music Podcast is available everywhere that you listen to podcasts, but on Apple Music podcast apps, you can subscribe and rate us. If you ever want to get in touch with me and give more direct feedback, you can email me at detoursandmusicpodcast@gmail.com. As always, thank you for listening, and I hope you catch the next one.